Hi there, you groupies for good. This is Scout Sanders, host of Positively Ridiculous podcast. On our next episode, we head to the tropics to celebrate July 4th and meet Optimism bias. You know, negativity bias is annoying fraternal twin. While chilling with her cool cousin from out of town, Meliorism. We'll discuss the highs and lows of optimism, watching the palm trees sway. So get packed, because Positively Ridiculous podcast is going on vacation. Talk soon. Hi there. My name is Rebecca Scout Sanders, and I was the run-of-the-mill skeptic, pessimist, and depressive personality I killed at parties until I studied positive psychology. Now I host Positively Ridiculous podcast, where we discuss the positive impacts of everyday people, places, and practices that bring happiness, inspire hope, and build flourishing communities in the most unassuming ways. We look at these subjects through the lens of positive psychology and how its science and application can and is improving our lives while riding shotgun with a self-admitted skeptic. So buckle up, Buttercup, and come take a ride on the positive side. Happy Tuesday, you groupies for good, and happy 4th of July to my fellow Americans. We turn 247 years old today after gaining independence from King George III in 1776, and we look fabulous. Thanks for the indentured servitude and taxation without representation, England, but we're going to stay over here and create our own version of liberty. Bye, boy. Bye. Enjoy work today, England. As for my American counterparts, I hope you remember to place a case of Miller Lite under your grill for Kid Rock, or you won't have any fireworks to let off tonight. Keep it classy, America. Yes, it is Independence Day in the States, but I have another reason to be excited and thankful. The last episode of Positively Ridiculous podcast reached a total of 10 countries, thanks to listeners joining us from Ireland and Pakistan. I really do believe that we have the greatest fans in the world. Not only are you down for joining this campaign for the ridiculous, you believe in it so much that you're telling your friends and families, and now they're listening, making our community of I see you, I hear you, I got you more diverse, larger, and more impactful. People want to be inspired, happy, fulfilled, and connected. And that's why I work so hard to bring you the people, places, and practices that have been scientifically proven to increase positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, mattering, and achievement. We all come from different parts of the world and have different definitions of happiness, but the one thing we can all agree on as citizens of the world is that we can do better and be better at leaving people, communities, organizations, and society better than the way we found it. We are here for good. Donna Markova perhaps said it best: I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of failing or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which comes to me as a blossom goes on as fruit. So now I'm getting all verklempt, so talk amongst yourselves. But next up, we're going to discuss optimism bias. So here we come. Let's delve into the captivating world of the biases, specifically exploring the differences and similarities between these two intriguing fraternal cognitive twins, optimism bias and negativity bias. If you haven't already, please go back and listen to episode 2, where I dive deep into negativity bias and its effects on health, the economy, and personal well-being. You'll also meet and hear from our first everyday hero. It's worth a listen. So, I like to use visualization to help clarify complex topics. Allow me to provide you with personality examples of our two biases. Think Ted Lasso or Olaf from Frozen when picturing optimism. And for our more pessimistic, negative attitudes, think Anakin Skywalker, Revenge of the Sith, and Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter. These biases may seem contradictory, but they are important in shaping our world perspectives. Today, we're going to explore their impact on our health, economy, and well-being. Additionally, we'll touch upon Meliorism, an ideology that influences bias and plays a vital role in shaping our perception of reality. The fictional character that best embodies Meliorism is Eowyn from The Lord of the Rings. Realistic, rational, and intent on seeing the human race reach their full potential. Okay, so all the families here, you know their names, but who are they? Really. According to researcher and neuroscientist Tali Sharot, optimism bias describes people's tendency to overestimate their likelihood of experiencing positive events and underestimate their likelihood of experiencing negative events in the future. This bias truly does wear rose-colored glasses and, like both indoors and outdoors, hugs everyone during COVID, and plays the name game with everyone they meet while shooting finger pistols. My favorite person. It's important to point out that optimism, like pessimism, exists on a continuum, exhibiting its own particular set of beliefs and behaviors. For example, slightly more optimistic people don't practice self-blame for situations out of their control. They don't generalize a bad situation to their entire life when bad things occur. They perceive failures as temporary and not permanent. They keep perspective and find solutions. But those who fall in the upper continuum of positivity bias or optimism bias have more extreme beliefs about themselves. Their capabilities, they believe that the world and the universe are specifically in their favor. They become blind to real risk, lack direction, don't handle adversity well, and become unmotivated because they believe fate is on their side. These are the more extreme bias individuals. So a brief recap of negativity bias. Negativity bias emphasizes negative experiences and it overlooks positive ones. So this bias stemmed from our primitive survival instincts, as we're wired to be more attuned to threats and hazards in our environment because we learned through evolution that life has to win every day, in contrast to death that only has to win once to be considered successful. Pretty hard lesson to learn. Negativity bias or chronic pessimism often manifests as an amplified reaction to negative events, leading to a perception that the world is more dangerous or problematic than it truly is. In modern-day society, we rarely face the kind of life and death scenarios our ancestors did. However, our brain doesn't know that, leading to undue stress, anxiety, and even depression. Although optimism bias appears to be frivolous, childish, and unrealistic, without it, we couldn't imagine a better future, invent new technologies, travel to Mars, have a robust economy, or even go on living. One main characteristic of cognition is the ability to infer what may occur in the future, enhancing our decision-making ability and to avoid harm while receiving rewards. 80% of the world's population has an optimism bias, and similar to negativity bias, it was developed for a reason: survival. It has a function to protect us from accurately perceiving the pain and difficulties that the future undoubtedly holds, and it may defend us from viewing our options in life as somewhat limited. This glass half full mentality fuels our hopes and dreams, pushing us forward, even in the face of adversity, often fostering a sense of confidence and resilience, motivating individuals to pursue challenging goals and overcome obstacles. Take our ancient ancestors, for example. If it weren't for one cave person's dream of living in a warm, dry shelter where they could defend themselves from predators, we would never have discovered fire or bearskin rugs. Optimistic people live longer, suffer from less disease, make more money, have better social networks, and have healthier relationships. Rashid and Seligman state that very little evidence exists that shows optimists are ever worse off than pessimists. Optimists report less distress because they cope in ways that yield better outcomes and take the necessary steps to ensure their future remains bright. Pessimists hold a negative worldview and are less persistent and are likelier to give up when difficulty arises. In 2015, an 8-year study of women showed optimists were less likely than pessimists to develop coronary heart disease by as much as 30%. Concersano examined 545 males aged between 64 and 84 for 15 years and found that optimistic men had a 50% less risk of dying from heart disease than pessimists. Heart bypass patients at 5 years post-surgery were also more likely to take vitamins, eat low-fat foods, and enroll in cardiac rehab, thereby reducing their risk of sudden cardiac death. Optimistic people are more likely to listen to health advice, stick to treatment plans, not start or stop unhealthy habits like smoking, exercise, they sleep better, they watch their weight and cholesterol, they participate in a hobby, and either develop or have close personal relationships. But how does optimism work? What is its secret to promoting long life and success? Easy. It supports your immune system, decreases stress hormones, and boosts the production of feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine. According to developmental molecular biologist Dr. John Medina and father of positive psychology, Dr. Marty Seligman, our ability to maintain optimism is a buffer against depression, decreasing our risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and certain forms of cancer. Pessimism causes our immune system to go offline, and as a result, stress hormone levels, namely cortisol, begin to rise. Stress hormones attack a very particular cell type in the immune system called a CD4 positive cell. These are white blood cells that play a very important role in our immune system. You may have heard of this white blood cell before because of its particular importance in HIV/AIDS patients. The lower a CD4 count becomes, the more imminent death is due to the body's inability to fight off infections from bacteria and fungus. And if you're depressed, cortisol levels rise exponentially, decreasing your ability to mount a sustained and effective fight against diseases like cancer, in addition to placing undue stress on your heart. Putting all of these things together and living a shorter life is almost guaranteed. An optimistic attitude can also ward off brain erosion by maintaining and increasing dopamine levels as we age, decreasing our likelihood of developing depression and dementia. We currently outlive our brain's lifespan. According to Dr. Medina, our ancient ancestors' average lifespan was around 30 years old. Except for the cave person who discovered fire, they likely tapped out around 38 after retiring to a nice cliffside cave community after a long, successful career as a cave drawing critic. He probably went by Chad or Alexander. I don't know. This belief is commonly held due to the brain development peak occurring around age 24, followed by its slow erosion. However, dopamine can significantly slow brain erosion by increasing our motivation and happiness, making us more likely to also participate in activities that increase blood flow to our brains. So, not to brag or anything, but optimism has been shown to increase the average lifespan by 8 years. Without optimism, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria would never have set out to discover a new world. Without the resilience and grit optimism affords us, today's holiday of July 4th likely wouldn't exist. Canada would be much bigger than it already is, and Mexico would probably be much happier. Primarily, the key distinction between optimism bias and negativity bias lies in the underlying nature and effects. Optimism bias is driven by hope and confidence. All negativity bias is rooted in fear and caution. Optimism bias emboldens individuals to take risks and embrace challenges, whereas negativity bias promotes risk aversion. Despite their conceptual differences, optimism bias and negativity bias share commonalities. Both biases can distort the perception of reality, leading to decision-making processes that are influenced by skewed expectations. For instance, Individuals with optimism bias may downplay potential risks associated with health choices, overlooking the need for precautions, or failing to acknowledge warning signs. This is why warning labels on cigarette packets and public service announcements regarding drunk driving are ineffective. Optimism bias won't let us believe that those horrible things will happen to us. To somebody else? Sure, but not us. On the other hand, negativity bias may cause individuals to avoid seeking medical help or participating in preventative health measures due to an exaggerated fear of potential negative outcomes. Optimism bias may lead individuals to exchange or engage in risky behaviors such as excessive drinking or substance abuse and unprotected sex, assuming that they are invulnerable to negative consequences. Now, I know that a lot of this sounds like the thought process of a teenager, but remember that optimism bias affects all genders and age groups equally. Sometime later today or tomorrow, when you go to Facebook or Instagram, you're going to see reels of 40-plus-year-old people doing things that only 20-year-old bodies should have been doing, whether that be riding a bike off a 10-foot ramp, skateboarding down a steep hill, or attempting to somersault into the lake or pool from a 30-foot platform. They're going to attempt it. Now, I'm not saying that the catalysts like Kid Rock and Miller Lite are not playing a part in this, but these are still examples of unrealistic expectations and outcomes in light of the facts. Now, I want to take a moment to speak to my people. To all urgent care and emergency room staff working today and into the early morning hours, I too have seen my fair share of butt rockets and hand grenades. Brothers and sisters, I stand with you when you say, let natural selection reign. God bless. Now, conversely, negativity bias can lead to hypochondria or excess worry about illness, impacting mental well-being. When it comes to the economy, optimists may fuel economic growth as individuals take calculated risks and invest in business ventures. However, an over-reliance on excessive optimism can also contribute to speculative bubbles and financial crises like the one we saw in 2008. Negativity bias may make individuals more risk-averse, potentially limiting economic growth due to cautious spending and investment patterns. You might expect the brain to process accurate, unbiased foresight given the importance of these future projections, but no. Research tells us that we are more optimistic than realistic, but oblivious to that fact. In a future episode, we'll discuss how people get caught up in Ponzi and pyramid schemes, despite the glaringly obvious warning signs and unachievable promises that are made to the victims. So remember that optimism bias refers to the tendency for individuals to underestimate their probability of experiencing adverse effects despite the obvious. Research conducted by Dreyku, Kress, and O found that we underestimate our chances of getting divorced, being in a car accident, or suffering from cancer. We also expect to live longer than objective measures tell us, overestimate our professional success, and believe our children will be exceptionally talented. However, if I ask you those questions regarding your married neighbor, you'll tell me that he has a 40% chance of getting divorced, has a 1 in 366 chance of wrecking his car, and has a 30% chance of being diagnosed with cancer. All of those statistics are correct, by the way, but not when it comes to us. This phenomenon is consistent across cultures, genders, races, and ages, and it is one of the most consistent, prevalent, and robust biases documented in psychology, medicine, and behavioral economics. Dr. Sherratt conducted an experiment that yielded some very interesting results regarding how belief operates when we have worse than expected outcomes. The research design was simple. She asked participants what they believed their likelihood of getting cancer would be. They would state their answer, and then Dr. Sherratt would provide them with their likelihood of getting cancer, which is about 30%. Participants who stated a likelihood higher than 30%, when they heard that their likelihood of getting cancer was lower, Those individuals could remember and change their belief of getting cancer to 30% upon follow-up questioning. So, they could integrate the new information and change their belief regarding their likelihood of getting cancer when the statistic was better than expected. However, Dr. Sherratt also found that people resisted changing their beliefs when delivering worse than expected information. So say you originally believed that your likelihood of getting cancer was 10%, and you found out that it was actually 30. When you saw Dr. Sherratt again and she asked you the same question, your answer may have changed to an 11% likelihood of getting cancer, but not much more. You know the answer is 30%, but you cannot comprehend that. Why? Why are we more likely to learn from good news than bad? The answer is brain structure and function. Thanks to modern technology, we can determine that we process and integrate positive information in the left inferior frontal gyrus, or left IFG. When we receive positive information, this side of the brain lights up, indicating high functioning and processing. We drink in positive information like dry sponges in water. Negative information is processed and integrated into the right IFG. When this area of the brain is imaged, it is remarkably less reactive when compared to the left IFG, meaning our brains aren't built to integrate negative information as well as it is positive. The processing and integration of negative information is like window shopping. You see what's there, but you ain't buying it. So if 80% of us poorly integrate what we see as negative or worse than expected news, are we destined to live out our lives seeing the world in rose-colored glasses while listening to Wham? Nope, not if you don't want to. Sherratt also found a way to eliminate optimism bias just by placing a funny-looking wave emitter to the right side of your head. You can go from happy-go-lucky to mildly depressed in as little as 30 minutes. But would you want to? Knowing what you know about optimism and its outcomes, would you really choose to be less optimistic or even mildly pessimistic if given the choice? Regarding the fictional characters mentioned earlier, whose storyline would you rather live out? Anakin's or Ted's? Olaf or Moaning Myrtle's? Speaking from personal experience, as someone who had to fight their way back from clinical depression and a pessimistic worldview after a series of traumas, a day in the life of Olaf doesn't sound so bad. But honestly, me as Olaf would probably come across as Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, so I'll go with Eowyn for the sake of the children. Because of the character Eowyn's on-screen attributes and actions, she makes a good example and argument for Meliorism. Meliorism is a philosophical belief in the potential for continued improvement in society and human nature. It plays a critical role in bias by challenging our default cognitive inclinations, by encouraging us to question our biases and encourage balanced thinking that incorporates both optimistic and pessimistic perspectives. By acknowledging the existence of bias, Meliorism fosters a more nuanced understanding of reality and promotes critical thinking. So, for example, a melioristic approach to overcoming optimism bias would be practicing these two researched approaches found to reduce optimism bias, and they were found by Joles and Susting. It's called highlight the availability heuristics, and what this means is that you make past bad events more easily retrievable from your memory. And then you use loss aversion, which highlights losses that are likely to occur because of these bad events. This enables us to acknowledge our optimistic bias while learning from real past experiences, their outcomes, and their potential risks. So again, taking a melioristic approach fosters a more nuanced understanding of reality and promotes critical thinking. You can do this in a journal, a spreadsheet, a picture album, or even practice while watching TV. Learning from other people's experiences through movies and books can help us effectively acknowledge bias and think about possible positive and negative outcomes for individuals, families, and society as a whole. Optimism bias and negativity bias, despite their apparent contradictions, coexist within our complex cognitive framework. Optimism bias fuels our dreams and our pursuit of success, while negativity bias keeps us safe and wary of potential threats. Both biases have specific applications for health, economy, and well-being, and should be considered in decision-making. Maintaining a melioristic outlook enables us to find a balanced approach, challenging our biases and fostering a well-rounded perception of reality. Hi there, you groupies for good. Please don't forget to like, follow, rate, and find us at positivelyridiculouspodcast.com or on whatever streaming service you use. We want your feedback and look forward to welcoming you into this community for good. Talk soon. Thank you for spending time with me on this, the 247th birthday of the United States. And thank you for joining me on this campaign for the ridiculous. I know we each have to choose our hard, and it's my hope to inspire you to choose the hard that makes you feel alive, courageous, fulfilled, and unstoppable. I want you to believe that optimism, generosity, kindness, empathy, and love have a place in this world and are themselves agents of change, because we belong here for good. Have a safe and happy holiday, America. We will talk again in August when my very special friend Laura Garrison Brooke joins me to discuss character strengths and their role in finding your purpose. Talk soon. Be sure to visit positivelyridiculouspodcast.com for episode resources and downloads. Don't forget to sign up for new episode notifications, shop our merch, and donate. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Positively Ridiculous Talk. Thanks for stopping by. And remember, you belong here for good.